They called me useless long before they ever called me by name. In a world that worships strength and loud displays of power, I was a ghost. I had no gift to show the elders, no lineage to impress the council, and a sense so faint I was barely a blip on the pack's radar. To them, I was a background character, someone to be looked through rather than looked at. Even the Alpha King, a man whose presence could silence entire territories, didn't bother to acknowledge me when he arrived to inspect our borders. He didn't reject me with a speech. He rejected me with his indifference. He walked past me as if I were part of the scenery, a useless omega not worth a second of his time. He thought his silence was a sign of his superiority. He didn't realize it was his greatest mistake, because the moment he stepped away, the power he relied on began to fail him. The dominance that kept his kingdom in check didn't come from his crown or his bloodline. It came from a balance he didn't even know I was maintaining. As the sky darkened and the mountain itself began to tremble, the useless girl he ignored became the only thing standing between him and total annihilation. By the time the sun set, the man who wouldn't even look at me was trembling. He wasn't standing over me as a judge anymore. He was falling to his knees, realizing that the nothing he discarded was actually his everything. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've been treated like you don't matter by people who think they're above you, stay with me, because the Alpha King is about to learn that true power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just waits for you to realize how much you need it. Before this story continues, pause for a moment and ask yourself this: what happens when someone everyone has overlooked is finally seen by the one person who should never have needed to kneel? Comment below. If you're drawn to slow burn awakenings, underestimated heroines, and moments that flip power on its head, subscribe now and stay to the end. This is not a story about becoming useful. It's a story about what happens when the world realizes it never understood her at all. She left the council chamber unnoticed. That hurt more than the insult. The corridors of the outer keep were cold and narrow, built for defense rather than comfort. She walked them slowly, breath even, hands clenched in her sleeves. Her wolf did not stir. It's fine, she told herself. It always is, except it wasn't. Outside, dusk settled over the training grounds. Warriors sparred in tight circles, dominance flaring and retreating in familiar rhythms. No one invited her to join. No one ever had. She crossed the grounds and slipped into the lower paths beyond the walls, where old stone markers half buried in earth marked boundaries no one bothered to maintain anymore. That was where the pressure hit. Not pain, awareness. She stopped abruptly, breath catching as the air thickened around her. The ground beneath her feet felt denser, as if the earth itself had decided to pay attention. Her wolf lifted its head for the first time in years. "Do you feel that?" "Yes," she whispered, pulse racing. The pressure did not push her away. It held her in place. Images flickered at the edge of her mind. Old rituals, kneeling figures, crowns set aside in moments of truth rather than conquest. Power that did not roar, but waited. She staggered back, heart pounding. "No," she breathed, "I don't have anything worth awakening." The air did not argue. She fled instead, back toward the keep, back toward familiar insignificance. The pressure eased the farther she moved, but it did not vanish entirely. It followed. That night, she lay awake on her narrow cot, staring at the ceiling while the keep settled around her. Her wolf paced restlessly now, no longer dormant. "They were wrong," it said hesitantly. "They're always right," she replied. "Not about this." Sleep finally claimed her just before dawn. She dreamed of kneeling, not in submission but in alignment, of crowns touching stone, of silence heavier than any roar. She woke shaking. The Alpha King did not think of her again that day. He had other concerns, alliances to manage, disputes to settle, whispers of unrest in distant packs. Power weighed heavily on him, a constant pressure that demanded vigilance. Yet something nagged at him. A gap, not a threat, an absence. He shook it off and continued on, unaware that the smallest oversight was already reshaping his future. By midday, the outer pack was in chaos. A ritual stone near the old boundary had cracked, cleanly, impossibly, without force or warning. The ground around it thrummed with energy no one could name. Warriors sent to investigate returned pale and unsettled. "It doesn't respond to dominance," one said. "It waits." The Alpha King went himself. The moment he stepped near the fracture, the pressure struck him full force. His dominance flared instinctively. The land did not respond. For the first time in his life, power did not echo back to him. Instead, the pressure turned, orienting, aligning, pulling his awareness toward a single direction, toward her. His breath caught. "No," he muttered. "That's impossible." But the pull did not release. Back in the keep, she felt it too, a sudden, undeniable resonance that snapped through her chest like a taut string plucked hard. Her wolf cried out, no longer small, no longer dim. "He sees us." Fear surged. "Hide," she whispered, scrambling to her feet. But the air was already shifting. Footsteps echoed in the corridor, measured, controlled, unmistakable. The Alpha King stopped outside her door. Silence stretched. Then, a knock. Not a command, not a demand. A knock, careful and restrained, as if the world itself were holding its breath. And for the first time in her life, the one they had called useless stood at the center of something that would not move without her. She did not answer the knock, not because she was defiant, because her body refused to move. The sound lingered in the narrow corridor outside her room, soft, deliberate, utterly wrong, coming from someone whose presence usually silenced entire halls. Her heart hammered against her ribs, each beat echoing with a pressure that was not fear, not exactly. Recognition. Her wolf pressed forward inside her chest, no longer dim, no longer curled inward. It stood now, alert and braced, as if it had been waiting its entire life for this exact moment. "Don't run," it urged. "This isn't danger." "It feels like it," she whispered, back pressed to the stone wall, palms damp. Another pause. Then the Alpha King spoke. "I know you're in there." His voice was lower than she expected, controlled, careful. Not the voice of a ruler addressing a subject, but of a man stepping onto uncertain ground. Her breath shook. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times in smaller, crueler ways, being summoned only to be dismissed again or punished for daring to exist near power. This was not that. This was worse, because something in her knew that opening the door would end the life she understood. Slowly, deliberately, she crossed the room and placed her hand on the latch. The instant her fingers touched metal, the pressure surged, not outward, not violently, but inward, aligning her breath, steadying her pulse. The latch warmed beneath her palm. She swallowed and opened the door. The Alpha King stood alone in the corridor. No guards, no flaring dominance, no crown. He had removed every symbol of command except his height and the quiet weight he carried so naturally. His gaze dropped immediately to her hands, then lifted to her face with an intensity that made her chest ache. "You felt it," he said. It was not a question. She nodded once, unable to trust her voice. The corridor shifted subtly, stone deepening, air thickening, as if the keep itself had leaned closer to listen. The Alpha King inhaled sharply, his posture tightening as he sensed it too. "This shouldn't be happening," he murmured. "No," she said hoarsely. "It shouldn't." He met her gaze fully now, something unsettled flickering behind his eyes. "You were unawakened." "That's what they said," she replied. Silence stretched between them, charged and brittle. "May I come in?" he asked. The question stunned her. Alphas did not ask permission. She stepped back wordlessly, letting him cross the threshold. The moment he did, the pressure snapped inward again, not amplifying him, not diminishing him, orienting him. His breath hitched. "What are you?" he demanded softly. She shook her head, panic flickering. "I don't know. I don't want this." "That," he said slowly, "is the only reason this place hasn't broken yet." Her knees weakened. She sank onto the edge of the narrow bed, fingers gripping the blanket. The Alpha King remained standing, hands clasped behind his back, posture rigid as if afraid to move too much. "The ritual stone cracked," he said, "not from force, from resonance." Her wolf stirred sharply. "It responded to you." "I didn't touch it," she whispered. "You didn't have to." His gaze sharpened. "You answered something." The words settled heavy in the air. "I was called useless," she said suddenly, the bitterness cutting through her fear. "They said I didn't matter." His jaw tightened. "They were wrong." The certainty in his voice startled her. "You didn't even see me," she snapped, anger flaring unexpectedly. "You looked through me like I wasn't real." His shoulders stiffened. "I was trained to notice threats and assets. You registered as neither." The honesty stung, but it rang true. "And now," she demanded. "Now," he said carefully, "the land doesn't respond to me the way it should. It orients towards you instead." Her chest tightened. That's not possible. It is, he replied, and it changes everything. She stood abruptly. I don't want to be part of this. I didn't ask for attention. I didn't ask for power. I know, he said quietly. That's why this is happening at all. The pressure in the room swelled slightly as if in agreement. He took a single step closer, then stopped, as though hitting an invisible boundary. I won't command you, he said. I can't. Whatever this is, it doesn't respond to dominance. Her wolf watched him closely, wary but unafraid. He's learning. What do you want from me? She asked. He hesitated. Understanding, he said at last. Because if the foundation of our order is shifting, I need to know whether it will collapse or be rebuilt. Her laugh came out sharp and humorless. You think I can tell you that? I think, he replied, meeting her gaze steadily, that the world has been waiting for someone like you to exist unnoticed. A knock sounded at the far end of the corridor, urgent this time. The Alpha King did not turn. They're afraid, she said softly. Yes, he agreed. So am I. The realization hung between them, uncomfortable, undeniable. For the first time in her life, the most powerful wolf in the realm stood in her small, cold room with no idea how to proceed. And for the first time, being called useless no longer fit the shape of her existence. Act 2, 1,000 words. The knock at the far end of the corridor came again, sharper this time, edged with urgency that did not dare rise into command. The Alpha King exhaled slowly, as if forcing himself to remember how to breathe without authority. He did not move toward the door. He did not dismiss the interruption. They feel it spreading, he said quietly. Whatever you touched, it didn't stay contained. I didn't touch anything, she replied, voice thin. I was just walking. That, he said, eyes never leaving her, may be the problem. The pressure in the room pulsed faintly, as though the walls themselves were listening to the exchange. She swallowed and wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly acutely aware of how small the room felt with him in it, not because of his size, but because of what he represented. Everyone out there thinks power looks like force, she said, like taking space until nothing else can breathe. Yes, he agreed. That's how I was trained. Her gaze snapped to his. And now, he admitted, the land doesn't answer me when I try. The honesty landed heavily. She felt something inside her shift, not triumph, not vindication, but a fragile sense of responsibility she didn't want. You should leave, she said suddenly, before this gets worse. Worse for whom? He asked. For everyone, she replied. They already think I'm a problem. If they see you here, they won't, he said, not like this. He stepped back deliberately, increasing distance between them. The pressure eased immediately, confirming what neither of them wanted to admit. It responds to proximity, he murmured. Then go, she said. Please. For a moment, she thought he would argue. Instead, he nodded once. I'll convene the elders, he said. Not to judge you, to listen. She laughed softly, disbelief threading through the sound. They won't know how. Neither do I, he replied. But they'll learn, or they'll be left behind. He turned toward the corridor, then paused. You should not be here when they arrive, he added. Not because you're in danger, because you're not. Her breath caught. Where should I go? There's an old boundary path beyond the lower markers, he said. Few remember it. Fewer still cross it. And you'll let me leave? She asked. I won't stop you, he said. I can't. He left without another word, his footsteps fading into the keep's depths. The moment he crossed the threshold, the pressure in the room loosened, but did not vanish. It settled instead, steady and watchful. Her wolf lifted its head. We should go. Yes, she whispered, before they decide what to do with us. She gathered what little she owned, cloak, knife, a small bundle of dried roots, and slipped into the outer corridors, just as the keep stirred with uneasy movement. Whispers followed her as she passed, eyes tracking her steps with newfound awareness. Not suspicion. Fear. Outside, the air felt sharp and clean, moonlight casting pale lines across stone and frost. She moved quickly, instincts guiding her toward the forgotten boundary markers she had crossed so often without thought. This time, the stones recognized her. As she stepped beyond the last marker, the pressure surged, not to stop her, but to open. The land stretched outward, pathways aligning before her feet, old roots reasserting themselves. She broke into a run. Behind her, the keep shuddered, not physically, but in awareness. Wolves froze mid-step, Dominance faltered. Conversations died unfinished. The elders gathered in the council chamber, uneasy, uncertain. "She's gone," someone said. The Alpha King closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. "Good, good," an elder snapped. "She's destabilizing everything." "No," he replied evenly. "She's revealing it." Outside the keep, she slowed only when the land softened beneath her feet, forest replacing stone, silence replacing scrutiny. She leaned against a tree, breath tearing in and out of her chest as the weight of what she'd left behind finally hit her. "I didn't want this," she whispered. Her wolf pressed close, steady and strong. "We didn't choose it, but it chose us." She straightened, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Then we'll move," she said. "We won't let them cage it." The forest seemed to listen and step aside. Far behind her, in a chamber built on centuries of command, the Alpha King stood before his elders and did something none of them had ever seen. He knelt, not in surrender, in acknowledgement. And in that moment, the balance of the realm tilted, quietly, irrevocably, toward something none of them yet understood. 8-3, 1,000 words. She did not stop running until the keep's lights were swallowed by trees and the night closed in around her like a held breath. Only then did she slow, lungs burning, boots sinking into soft earth that welcomed her weight without resistance. The forest here was older than walls, older than councils. It did not care who ruled behind stone. It only listened. She bent forward, hands braced on her knees, heart racing. The pressure that had followed her from the keep shifted, not heavier, not lighter, just present, as if the land itself were waiting to see what she would do next. "I don't know where to go," she admitted softly. Her wolf circled once, then settled at her side, alert but calm. "Anywhere you choose," it replied. "It isn't pushing anymore." That frightened her more than being chased ever could have. Choice had weight. She moved again at dawn, following the old boundary path the Alpha King had mentioned. The markers were barely visible now, stones half buried, runes worn smooth by time, but her feet found them without effort. Each step felt correct, as if she were walking along an agreement rather than a trail. By midday, she reached a shallow valley cut by a slow-moving river. The air here thrummed faintly, not with dominance or threat, but with memory. She knelt at the bank and dipped her fingers into the water. The river stilled. Her breath caught. "No," she whispered. "Don't do that." The water resumed its flow gently, as if embarrassed to have responded so quickly. She pulled her hand back, shaking slightly. Her wolf watched with wide eyes. "It answers when you're honest." "I didn't ask," she said. "You didn't command," the wolf corrected. "You were present." The distinction lodged painfully. She made camp beneath a low stand of trees and spent the afternoon doing nothing, deliberately resisting the urge to reach outward with her awareness. Each time she relaxed too fully, the land leaned closer, responsive and alert. This was not power. It was resonance, and it demanded restraint. As night fell, the pressure sharpened briefly, warning, not threat. She rose quietly and sensed movement at the valley's edge. Wolves approached, careful and unhurried, their auras folded inward. Not hunters, seekers. She remained where she was, hands visible, posture neutral. A young female stepped forward first, eyes wary but hopeful. "You left the keep." "Yes," she replied. "They said you cracked a ritual stone." "I didn't," she said honestly. It responded. The wolves exchanged glances. "We felt it," the female continued, like something stopped shouting. The words tightened her chest. "I don't want followers," she said carefully. "I don't want a pack." "We're not asking for that," the female replied. "We just don't know what to do now." Silence stretched. She chose her words with care. "Sit," she said gently, "and breathe." They hesitated, then did. She sat with them, not leading, not guiding, simply present. The valley warmed faintly, the river's rhythm deepening as the wolves' breathing slowed. Minutes passed, then hours. When they finally rose, their eyes were clearer, not healed, not empowered, aware. They left quietly before dawn. Her wolf exhaled slowly. "It's starting." "Yes," she whispered, "and I don't know how to stop it." "You don't," the wolf replied. "You move." Far behind her, the Alpha King rose from his kneel to a chamber filled with stunned silence. No one spoke, not because they feared him, because they did not understand him anymore. "I won't rule the way I used to," he said evenly. "If that fractures the realm, then the realm was already broken." An elder found his voice at last. "She's dangerous." "No," the Alpha King replied. She's inconvenient. He turned away from them and ordered scouts north, not to retrieve her, to observe. She felt them before she saw them days later. Controlled, disciplined presences keeping distance rather than pressing close. She did not confront them. She did not flee. She simply kept moving. The land, complicated pursuit without hostility, paths bending subtly, scents overlapping, urgency bleeding away before it could sharpen. The scouts returned unsettled. She doesn't resist, one reported. She doesn't lead. But wherever she stops, things slow. The Alpha King closed his eyes briefly. So it's begun, he murmured. Winter crept closer. She moved through forests and open plains alike, never staying long enough to become a center. Wolves found her sometimes, alone, cautious, honest. She never gathered them. She listened. They left changed, and each time she walked away, the land held what it had learned. One night, staring into a small fire beneath unfamiliar stars, she whispered the question that had been tightening in her chest for days. What happens when this reaches you? Her wolf watched the flames. Then the world will have to choose. She exhaled slowly. She had been called useless because she did not fit the shape of power they recognized. They were about to learn what happened when power stopped needing their permission. By the time the first snow dusted the lowlands, the realm had begun to fracture, not with violence, but with hesitation. Orders slowed. Commands lingered unanswered. Dominance surged and fell flat. She felt it everywhere she went, like a tremor beneath the surface of the world. Wolves paused before striking. Alphas hesitated before asserting. The land itself seemed to breathe between moments, widening the space where choice could exist. She moved through it quietly, keeping to old routes and forgotten paths. Not hiding, but not inviting attention either. Each place she stopped responded in the same way. Tension eased, noise softened, the frantic push of hierarchy lost its grip. It terrified those who depended on certainty. One evening, as dusk bled into night, she reached a high stone plateau overlooking a narrow valley. Wind scoured the rock clean, carrying scent and sound far beyond what she could see. She knelt and pressed her palm lightly to the ground. The plateau answered, not with warmth, with memory. Images flickered through her awareness. Ancient gatherings, wolves standing in circles without rank, voices raised not in command but in accord. Crowns set aside, leaders chosen for wisdom rather than force. Her breath caught. This existed before. Her wolf's ears flicked. Before fear became useful. She pulled her hand back, shaken. The plateau did not cling to her awareness. It released her easily. That, more than anything, told her the truth. This wasn't about her. She was simply arriving at places the world had forgotten how to remember. The Alpha King felt the plateau awaken from leagues away. He stood in the council hall as reports blurred together. Pacts reorganizing without permission, alliances stalling without conflict, border disputes dissolving without victory. No one was rebelling. That was the problem. She's dismantling authority, an elder snapped. No, the Alpha King replied quietly. She's revealing where it's hollow. He dismissed the council early and retreated to the balcony overlooking the city. The mountain air cut sharp against his skin, grounding him. For the first time in his life, the land beneath his feet felt indifferent, not hostile, unimpressed. The realization settled heavy in his chest. I was never the source, he admitted softly. The words did not weaken him. They steadied him. The scouts returned at dawn, faces tight with uncertainty. She doesn't build a following, one reported. She doesn't speak of change. She doesn't challenge anyone. Then why does everything feel unstable? An elder demanded. Because she leaves, the scout replied, and things don't go back to the way they were. Silence followed. The Alpha King closed his eyes briefly. Do not pursue her. The order startled them. She's a threat, someone protested. No, he said firmly. She's a mirror. She felt the scouts withdraw. Not relief. Confirmation. The pressure that followed her eased slightly, as if the world itself had decided to stop testing whether she would be forced into a role she didn't want. That night, she encountered a pack on the brink. They were camped in a shallow ravine, voices sharp with argument. An alpha stood rigid at the center, dominance flaring unevenly, cracking against resistance he could not identify. She approached slowly, making no attempt to hide her presence. The alpha turned, bristling. This is pack business. Yes, she said calmly, and it's tearing you apart. His snarl faltered. I didn't ask for interference. I'm not offering it, she replied. She stepped past him and sat on a stone at the ravine's edge, posture open, breathing slow. The argument did not stop immediately, but it changed. Voices dropped. Words lost their edge. The alpha's dominance faltered, not because it was challenged, but because it had nothing to press against. One by one, the wolves fell silent. The alpha stared at her, chest heaving. What are you doing? Nothing, she replied. I'm staying. The land responded, not amplifying her presence, but anchoring the moment. The ravine felt suddenly held. After a long while, the alpha sank to one knee, not in submission, but exhaustion. I don't know how to lead like this, he admitted hoarsely. She met his gaze gently. Then don't lead tonight. The pack stayed there until dawn. No decisions were made. No dominance asserted. When the sun rose, the alpha stood and dismissed them, not with command but invitation. She left before they could thank her. Word spread anyway, not of her name, of a presence, of moments when alphas hesitated and found they did not collapse, of wolves realizing they could breathe without permission. They called her dangerous. They called her destabilizing. They still called her useless. But now the word rang hollow. She stood alone at sunrise on the plateau, watching light spill across the valley. Her wolf sat beside her, calm and unwavering. They will come, it said. Yes, she replied. Not to follow. No, she agreed, to test. The wind shifted, carrying scent she recognized even before the land whispered confirmation. The Alpha King was coming. Not with armies, not with demands, with uncertainty heavy enough to bend even him. She did not run. She did not brace. She simply waited, grounded, quiet, and unclaimed. Because the moment that would reshape the realm was no longer hers to control. It belonged to what happened when power finally learned where it could no longer stand. She felt him before she saw him. The air tightened, not with dominance, but with gravity. The plateau did not brace itself. It did not flare or resist. It simply acknowledged the approach, as if a long-anticipated question were finally being carried toward it. She remained where she was, seated on the stone, hands resting loosely in her lap. The Alpha King crested the ridge alone. No guards, no banners, no crown. The wind tugged at his cloak, revealing the wear beneath the authority, lines etched by vigilance rather than age, eyes sharpened by responsibility rather than cruelty. His dominance was present, but folded inward, contained like a blade kept sheathed by choice. He stopped several paces away. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he did something no Alpha King had done on open ground in generations. He removed the sigil from his chest and set it carefully on the stone between them. Not thrown, placed. The plateau breathed. Her wolf's ears flicked. He's serious. Yes, she murmured, and afraid. You don't look surprised, the Alpha King said quietly. I felt you coming, she replied. The land announced you. A faint, rueful smile touched his mouth. It doesn't announce me anymore. The admission landed heavier than any declaration. He stepped closer, then stopped abruptly as if encountering an invisible line. The air thickened, not pushing him back, not letting him advance. She felt it too. Boundary, not hers. The plateau's. I can't cross, he said. No, she agreed. Not like this. His jaw tightened, not in anger but restraint. I didn't come to claim anything. I know. Silence stretched, heavy but unhostile. They called you useless, he said at last. Yes. They were wrong. She studied him, searching for flattery or manipulation, and found none. Only recognition sharpened by humility. You didn't see me either, she said gently. I see you now, he replied, and I don't know what to do with that. The honesty sent a tremor through the stone beneath her feet. Then sit, she said softly. He hesitated only a moment before lowering himself onto the rock opposite her. Carefully, deliberately, like someone unlearning a habit ingrained too deep for thought. The instant he settled, the pressure eased. The plateau warmed, not to him, to the space between them. What is this place, he asked. A memory, she replied, one the world forgot how to hold. His gaze flicked to the valley below, where early light caught frost and shadow alike. I was taught that order requires fear. Yes, she said, fear is efficient. And wrong, he added quietly. She met his eyes. Fear collapses when silence arrives. The Alpha King exhaled slowly. You didn't dismantle my rule. No, she agreed. You did. The words did not wound him. They clarified. I knelt once before my council, he said, not for strategy, for honesty. Her wolf stilled, attention sharp. This matters. And, she asked, They didn't know what to do with it, he admitted. Some were relieved, some were terrified, a few left. That's how truth moves, she said. It doesn't ask permission. He nodded slowly. I don't want the realm to shatter. It won't, she replied, but it will stop pretending. The wind rose briefly, carrying scent across the plateau. The land hummed, not in response to authority, but alignment. Will you lead them? He asked suddenly. The question struck sharper than any accusation. No, she answered without hesitation. I won't be placed above others again. He absorbed that quietly. Then what are you? She considered the question carefully. I'm a pause, she said at last. A moment where the world remembers it has a choice. His breath hitched, not in fear but understanding. The Alpha King lowered his head, then slowly, deliberately, he went to his knees. Not in submission, in acknowledgement. The plateau did not flare, it did not surge, it held. Every old story about power cracked in that moment, not with violence but inevitability. I don't ask you to rule, he said quietly. I ask you to let this continue. Her chest tightened. It doesn't need me anymore. I know, he replied, but it needed you once. They remained there as the sun climbed higher, two figures grounded in stillness rather than rank. At last he rose and retrieved his sigil, not to fasten it back into place, but to hold it thoughtfully in his hand. I will not be the last king, he said, but I will be the first who listens. She stood as well, the boundary dissolving naturally as the moment passed. That's enough, she said. He inclined his head, not bowing, not dominating, acknowledging. When he turned to leave, the land did not resist him. It accepted him. And when she walked away in the opposite direction, the plateau remained warm, no longer waiting for anyone to stand at its center, because something far more dangerous than power had been restored to the world. Choice. The Alpha King did not look back as he descended the plateau. That alone told her how deeply the moment had marked him. Old alphas would have paused, would have sought confirmation, reassurance, permission to believe what had just happened. He did none of that. He walked as someone carrying a decision that could not be returned. The land watched him go, not with approval, with acknowledgement. She remained where she was long after his presence faded, feeling the echo of that kneeling settle into the bones of the world. The plateau cooled gradually, returning to its quiet indifference, as if to remind her that no moment, no matter how monumental, was meant to be held forever. Her wolf exhaled slowly. That was never about you. No, she agreed. It was about what he was willing to let go of. They left the plateau together as dusk bled across the sky, taking a narrow descent path that wound through stone and scrub. Below, the land softened into valleys where small packs lived without banners or grand halls, their politics governed by proximity rather than decree. Here, change arrived differently, not in proclamations, in habits. She passed through a settlement built around a spring where wolves paused in their work to watch her, not with reverence, but recognition they could not name. No one challenged her presence. No one deferred to it either. They simply adjusted, voices lowering, tempers easing. One elder approached her by the fire that night, eyes sharp with a lifetime of leadership earned rather than inherited. They say you made the Alpha King kneel, the elder said. I didn't, she replied calmly. He chose to. The elder studied her carefully. Choice is dangerous. Yes, she said. That's why it matters. The elder nodded once and returned to the fire without another word. Far to the east, the Alpha King returned to his city without escort. The council chamber filled quickly, tension thick, as wolves sensed the shift in him before he spoke. He stood before them without the practiced flair of dominance that once defined his presence. I will not rule by fear anymore, he said evenly. The declaration landed like a fault line opening beneath centuries of tradition. An elder surged to his feet. That's madness. No, the Alpha King replied calmly. It's honesty. Another voice cut in. You knelt. Yes, he said, and the realm did not end. Silence swallowed the chamber. I won't stop any pack that chooses a different path, he continued. I won't enforce obedience that requires blindness. Those who stay will lead with me or walk without my interference. Outrage followed, fear, relief. Several wolves left before the session ended. He did not call them back. She felt the ripple pass through the world as she crossed a narrow river days later. The water did not still. It did not surge. It simply flowed. Her wolf glanced back once. It's spreading without you. Yes, she replied. That's how it should be. She moved on. Where she passed, dominance no longer slammed into space automatically. Alphas felt the absence first, like a limb gone numb from long misuse. Some panicked, tightening control until it cracked. Others adapted, letting leadership settle into something quieter. Neither outcome belonged to her. Weeks passed. Snow fell, then melted. She crossed plains and forests alike, never staying long enough to become story or symbol. When wolves found her, it was never by accident, but she never encouraged them to linger. What should we do? They asked sometimes. She always answered the same way. Listen first. It was never satisfying. It was always effective. At the basin, far from the plateau, far from her path, the stones continued to hum softly. Wolves arrived and departed, learning to sit with themselves without flinching. No guardian watched the place. No authority claimed it. And yet it held. One evening, beneath a sky heavy with stars, she stopped beside a low ridge and made a small fire. The flames danced without urgency, warmth rising steadily. Her wolf settled beside her, posture loose and content. Do you miss it? She considered the question. No, she said. I miss believing I was small. The realization surprised her with its gentleness. She had not been useless. She had been unclaimed, and the world was finally learning the difference. The fire burned low as night deepened, and when she rose to move on, there was no sense of leaving something unfinished, because what mattered no longer required her presence to exist. Spring arrived unevenly that year. In some regions, snow lingered stubbornly, refusing to release its hold. In others, new growth pushed through frost as if impatience itself had become a force. The realm mirrored that imbalance perfectly, packs adapting at different speeds, some clinging to the old ways with aching determination, others stepping into unfamiliar quiet with cautious hope. She felt it everywhere, not as pressure, as tension releasing. She crossed into a lowland territory where disputes had once been settled with bloodshed before sunrise. Now voices rose, but claws stayed sheathed. Wolves argued longer, louder, and with more exhaustion than before, but they did not escalate. That restraint cost them, but it also saved them. One evening, she encountered a fractured pack camped near a dried riverbed. Their alpha paced restlessly, dominance flaring in uneven bursts that failed to settle his people. When he noticed her, his posture stiffened. You're not welcome here. I'm not staying, she replied calmly. He sneered. You think because the king knelt. I didn't make him kneel, she said gently, and you don't need to stand for me. The alpha froze, breath catching as if struck. She did not move closer. She did not push, she simply remained present. The land responded by holding the moment. Gradually, the alpha's dominance faltered, not collapsing, but thinning, losing the edge that had sharpened it into a weapon. His shoulders sagged, exhaustion breaking through anger. I don't know how to lead like this, he said hoarsely. I know, she replied. None of you were taught. One by one, the wolves in the camp sat, some reluctantly, some gratefully. The alpha stared at them, horror flickering across his face. They're abandoning me, he whispered. No, she said softly, they're waiting. The distinction hit harder than any challenge. She left before dawn. By the time she reached the ridge overlooking the dried riverbed, the pack had reorganized itself. Not cleanly, not perfectly, but without violence. The land exhaled. Far away in the mountain sea, the Alpha King faced the hardest season of his reign. It was not opposition that tested him. It was absence. Old enemies did not rise against him. No rebellion surged. Instead, wolves stopped asking him to decide things they could decide themselves. Power returned more slowly now. It echoed less. And in that quiet, he learned restraint. You're losing influence, an elder warned. I'm losing dependency, the Alpha King replied. The elder did not understand the difference. He no longer tried to explain. She sensed him once more weeks later, not close, not seeking her, but steady, anchored in a way he had never been before. The awareness brought neither bitterness nor longing, only closure. Her wolf noticed the shift too. He changed. Yes, she agreed. That was his work. By midsummer, the stories had begun to change. They no longer spoke of a useless wolf. They spoke of moments when dominance failed without disaster, of alphas who paused and discovered they did not vanish, of packs that survived honesty. Her name was still absent from the stories. She preferred it that way. Symbols became cages too easily. She came to a high plain where wildflowers spread unclaimed, colors bright against open sky. She lay among them and let the sun warm her skin, breathing without awareness, reaching outward. For the first time since the council chamber, the pressure inside her faded complete. Nothing answered. Nothing waited. She laughed softly. Good, she murmured. Her wolf rolled onto its back beside her, content. We're done being necessary. Yes, she replied. Now we get to exist. The realm did not stabilize overnight. Some packs collapsed, others thrived. Some alphas clung to fear until it broke them. Others learned to lead without it. But one thing never returned: silence born of obedience. Once listening had entered the world, it could not be forced back into quiet submission. She rose as dusk settled, brushing petals from her cloak, and continued walking west, toward no destination that needed naming. Behind her, the world adjusted slowly, painfully, honestly. And somewhere, far from crowns and councils, power finally learned what it meant to stand without standing on anyone at all. She reached the western edge of the realm at the turn of the season. Here the land flattened into wide plains where wind ruled more than stone, and wolves lived without monuments or inherited halls. Packs gathered and separated with the weather, leadership shifting by need rather than tradition. No one ruled long enough to forget listening. It felt honest. She slowed her steps, letting the wind comb through her hair, carrying scent far beyond what her eyes could see. Nothing in this place leaned toward her. Nothing recoiled. For the first time since the council chamber, the world did not respond to her presence at all. Relief loosened her chest. Her wolf padded beside her, calm and unburdened. This is where stories end, it observed. No, she replied softly. This is where they stop needing to be told. They camped beneath a sky so open it felt unfamiliar. No stone circles, no remembered rituals, just grass bending under stars that watched without judgment. She built a small fire and warmed her hands, feeling nothing stir beneath the ground. No answering hum, no pull, no waiting. She smiled. Far behind her, the realm continued its slow, uneven transformation. The Alpha King stood before his people at midsummer, not elevated, not crowned. He spoke rarely now, and when he did, it was with care. I won't command what refuses fear, he told them. I will stand where I'm chosen. Some wolves left, many stayed, none knelt, and for the first time in generations, the land beneath the mountain city stopped bracing itself against its own ruler. The basin remained, quiet and unclaimed. Wolves still found it, not because they were sent, but because something inside them finally grew tired of shouting. They sat, breathed, and left. No guardian watched the stones. No authority enforced the lesson. It held anyway. On the plains, she encountered a young alpha traveling alone. He studied her briefly, then inclined his head, not in dominance, not in submission. You're passing through, he said. Yes. He considered her, then nodded. Safe travels. No recognition sparked, no resonance flared. She walked on without regret. As days passed, she began to forget the sound of her name spoken with contempt. The memory dulled, not erased, but reduced to something that no longer defined the shape of her breath. She had been called useless because she did not fit the world's language of power. The world had changed its language instead. Her wolf paused one evening, ears flicking as if listening to something distant. Do you think they remember you? She considered the question carefully. No, she said, and that's how I know it worked. They continued west as the sun sank low, the horizon stretching endlessly before them. There was no boundary marker here, no stone announcing transition, just space. She felt no urge to stop, no sense of completion demanding acknowledgement, only motion. Behind her, Pax learned, slowly, imperfectly, that power without listening could not sustain itself, that dominance without consent decayed, that silence, once respect, could never again be mistaken for obedience. She had not led them there. She had only stepped out of the way long enough for the truth to stand on its own. The fire she lit that night burned low and clean. When she rose, she scattered the embers with care, leaving nothing behind that needed tending. Her wolf glanced back once, then forward again. They will tell stories. Yes, she said, but not the ones they started with. They walked into the open dark together, footsteps fading into wind and grass, and somewhere far behind her, on stone worn smooth by centuries of command, the Alpha King lowered himself to one knee, not because anyone demanded it, but because the world had finally taught him where true power had always been waiting.